afternoon, everyone. We want to welcome you to our Lunch and Learn series with Friday Eldridge and Clark. We're here today to hopefully answer some of your questions related to vaccines and other COVID-related issues. Before we begin, just a couple quick notes. We will definitely be taking questions using the chat feature. So if you could use that for us, we'd appreciate it, and we'll do our best to answer those. And then a copy of today's presentation, our video of this, will actually be available to you at the end. So later today, I'll send you an email with that link in case you missed part of it, or if you want to share it with colleagues, I'll provide that to you. With us today is our attorney, Michael Moore. He's the head of the Labor and Employment practice group here at Friday Eldridge and Clark, and he's a member of the firm's management committee, and he's been practicing law for 40 years. So he is going to be able to give us a lot of insight today. We also have Associate Julio Olaya. Did I say that right? Olaya? Olaya, sorry. I should know, right? He joined us last year, and he focuses his practice on litigation matters related to labor and employment and medical malpractice. So with that, I'll let you guys take it over.
Thanks, Tabitha, and I want to welcome all of y'all. I wish I could see everybody's face. As I have discussed with a whole bunch of y'all over the last year, it's been nonstop change, and what I've told everybody all along is we're all just flying by the seat of our pants, trying to figure out how to navigate the changes that come our way all the time. We hope that we've helped with our newsletters, our news alerts that we've sent out throughout this period of time. We made a pretty strong effort to help get information out. You know, I've had the opportunity to participate with the State Chamber and the Better Business Bureau on lots of webinars that many of y'all have participated in. But we wanted to do something for our clients, and just do it from the firm and not have to partner with anybody else. And I want to personally let y'all know how grateful we are for our clients. And I've had some conversations recently with some of y'all who we've developed great relationships over the years with. And I looked at the list of folks who had registered that Tabitha sent me last night, and it really made me realize how blessed we are as a firm to have y'all to work with. So we want these things, these lunch and learns that we're going to try and do once a month. We want to we want y'all's input. So if you got a topic you want to discuss, send me an email. Everybody's got my email, and you can send it to me and we'll add it. We're not going to do these things if we don't have timely topics that people are interested in. We all get way too many invites for seminars that are rehashing the same old thing. And luckily for the last year, there hadn't been any same old thing. It's all been new and fresh for us. So we hope to keep it that way, and we'll do these as long as we have good, fresh things to discuss. So with that, I wanted to thank y'all so much for being here with us today. And I'm going to let Julio take charge of the presentation for a little bit, and then we'll pop in and out with questions and discussions.
Thanks, Mike. Now, I may be a new face. I look forward to getting to know everyone, especially after COVID is over. But speaking of timely issues, right now, what's at the forefront of almost everyone is the COVID vaccine. And the EEOC, as recent as December, they announced new guidelines in the form of questions and answers, so it could be easily digestible for all of us. Well, we went ahead and we read them and digested them even more, and created this presentation, hopefully as a way we can help y'all get through these issues. Now, this guidance covered a wide range of topics. We're going to hit the most important ones. Mike's going to help us out with some of the real world applications. I'm going to hit the law. And we'll start off with the thing on everyone's mind. Tabitha. Oh, so can an employee be vaccinated or be required to be vaccinated by their employer? The simple answer is yes, but the more complicated one is yes, but should you do it? Now, there are too many reasons why you may want to mandate it, but there's also more why you should think about making it voluntary. One of the reasons is if you mandate it, you might run into some tricky issues with some of the labor laws out there. So to start off, we'll hit the reasons why it might be more beneficial to start off with voluntary compliance. And it's important with any employment decision to develop a clear written policy highlighting what you expect of your employees. Now, in this case, if you're trying to incentivize or encourage vaccination, one of the good points that's suggested is offer education about vaccines, offer why they're good, why they're helpful, why they're healthy, and then additionally think about covering the cost of these vaccinations for employees. Provide reasonable incentives, pay time off if they do feel side effects from if they get vaccinated. It's important to keep these incentives reasonable. There are situations where if you go overboard, it might be an involuntary decision at that point. But I'm sure we can all agree what might be reasonable, what might not be. Most importantly is to lead by example. No one likes to be told to do something and then seeing someone else not do what they just said. I think Mike might want to chime in on this.
Yeah, and so that last lead by example, I think, is important. So, you know, a lot of these opportunities everybody has to start partnering with a community pharmacy that's going to be given vaccinations. I'll tell you the examples from our firm. We have a pharmacy on the first floor of our building that they're giving vaccinations, and every time they do a group of doses, at the end of the day, they end up with some doses left over. And what they do, what they have done is call up here to our firm and said, "Who wants? We got six extra doses. Who wants to come down and get a vaccination?" And so we've had people do that, and I'm hoping I get the call this week. And what we've encouraged the people who get that vaccination is to tell their coworkers, "Hey, I went down and got my vaccination. I'm happy about that." Obviously, the covering the cost, that's an easy one, given the time off. I think right now, because of the relative inaccessibility of many vaccinations, that it's the good time to offer the education and have that pharmacy that you might partner with present some information to your employees to encourage people to do it voluntarily. A question in chat real quick: would you encourage giving people gift cards or additional monetary benefits for agreeing to take the shot? Are there any potential landmines in doing this? You know, I think that I would slowly enter the incentive stage, since we're slowly entering the vaccine process. Say you take the time off, you're going to be paid for the time you're getting a vaccination. If you're feeling bad, we're going to give you free PTO that won't get charged against your PTO if you're suffering some side effects. Monetary benefits ultimately are a potential incentive without much in the way of landmines. All right, sorry.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Well, now that we've touched a little bit about the voluntary vaccination, we're going to hit the potential landmines if you do decide eventually to mandate vaccines. So, like with any vaccination, the CDC requires pre-medical screening questions related to the vaccination. And this is done just to make sure you either have no allergies, you are not, you don't have any issues that preclude you from maybe getting this vaccine. But it's trickier when these questions are connected with an employer, because any sort of pre-vaccination screening questions could elicit something related to their disability, which is protected under the ADA. So in this instance, if you, an employer, are giving these vaccines, you have to be careful about the questions you ask. So anything that you do ask has to show that they are job related and consistent with business necessity. So an example of that's safe to ask in a pre-vaccination screening question is, are you sick today? That's limited to today, to the instance that they're getting vaccinated, and it doesn't show any past history of or any potential disability related answers that would be protected. The question that would probably not work out is, do you get vaccinated a lot? And as you can kind of imply from the question, you're asking about their history, about their past. This could bring up disability related answers that we want to avoid. Kind of related to that, a little different, is can you ask an employee for proof of vaccination? The answer is yes, you can. The simple reason is they could have many reasons why they weren't vaccinated, many of them which might not be disability related. So the wide range of answers means that this is a safe question, but you have to be careful because you can still ask it incorrectly, such as over here, why didn't you get vaccinated? Again, so many reasons why they didn't. Some of them might be disability related questions, and with the why question there, that might be brought up, and it's something that is protected and we want to avoid. So keep it short, keep it narrow to only proof of vaccination, particularly if you're receiving information from a healthcare provider, which sometimes might come attached with other things that you should not be privy to.
Right, and the one thing I think on the why didn't you get vaccinated is the question. The only time you want to ask that question is if you've decided to implement a policy requiring everybody to get tested, because that's the only way you get to the concept of whether you have to accommodate either a disability issue or a religious issue, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes.
So moving on to the disability. Now, an employee comes up to you and asks, I can't get vaccinated, I have a disability. Well, in that case, you have to decide whether they pose a direct threat to others in your workplace. You, as an employer, you have to create a safe environment in which your employees can work at, and having potentially an unvaccinated employee in the workplace work there could expose them to substantial harm. This is an individualized assessment. The 4 factors, I'm going to read them off the screen here, is the duration of the risk, the nature and severity of the potential harm, the likelihood that the harm will occur, and the imminence of the potential harm. Now, the EEOC has proactively declared COVID-19 a direct threat. However, that could change at any moment. It's always best to base any sort of assessment off of these factors because those are the same factors that the EEOC is basing that off of.
And there are not any very clear answers on where you got to go with the analysis of whether it's a direct threat. And part of the issue is how universal a workforce are you going to have that has been vaccinated. And what you want to say is that you're failing to get vaccinated poses a direct threat to you and others. And the questions on the other side are you open to the public? Are you requiring your customers who enter the premises to show proof of vaccine? And, if, for example, you're a restaurant and you're trying to require all your servers to get vaccinated, but you're allowing customers to come in without proof of vaccination, then your ability to prove the likelihood of potential harm for them not getting vaccinated is probably less. It's one of those things we're going to be involved in litigation over this issue for a number of years.
Tabitha, could you go to the next one? We'll come back to this one. So you've decided that an unvaccinated employee is a direct threat. Now, when that happens, you have to see if you can reasonably accommodate them. Now, that's also an individual decision. You have to decide what this employee does at his work, what work functions would be affected, would his work be affected if he, say, for example, worked from home. Since he's a direct threat at his workplace, and if he will work from home, he would be safely performing his job. Like the check mark up here, the employee has the ability to work from home and will not interfere with his job function. You have to accommodate. But there are situations where that won't work. Now, for example, if their job requires them to interact with people, interact with machines, particularly in a factory, it's very difficult to accommodate an employee when they're a direct threat to others, they're not vaccinated, and they want to be moved somewhere away from the rest of the office or the factory. In that case, there's no reasonable accommodation. But you always have to take into account each individual case. There may be situations where it is, but in that instance, it would be lawful to exclude them from the workplace. So we went from disability to an objection based on religious beliefs, a little different. If an employee comes to you and says, I can't get vaccinated, it is against my religion, well, you're going to have to assume as an employer that that belief is sincerely held. We don't question someone's religious practice or beliefs. What ends up happening is, are they sincerely held? But in our case, guidelines tell us we have to assume it is sincerely held unless you have an objective basis, as in you've seen something, you've heard something, and it goes against what they told you, you can request more information. Until you have that basis, you're stuck with the assumption that it's sincerely held. Now, if that's the case, you also, similar as with disability, you have to reasonably accommodate them absent undue hardship, similar to the analysis we did before.
Interestingly, I had a case before COVID where I had a client who had an employee who didn't want to get a flu shot, and it was because of religious reasons. And they asked, what are those religious reasons? She said, I'm Wiccan. And so what we did was did a quick Google search of vaccination and Wicca, and determined that there was no objective basis in the literature that would be a sincerely held religious belief under Wicca. And so we confronted her with that, and she ended up deciding that she needed to move on and go to work somewhere else.
Now, any questions relating on what we just talked about? I'm sure there are plenty out there.
Yeah, let me, Julio, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the questions we got from people yesterday. While people want to add any questions to chat they want. One question was for public employers who have First Amendment issues, whether that's any different under the religious accommodation. And we kind of looked at it, and I think that the analysis is pretty close to the same. If it's a sincerely held religious belief, there's an accommodation requirement. I just think, given what the CDC and the EEOC have said about the danger of COVID, that I'm gonna err on the side of not accommodating if it poses a threat to people. Another question was reporting COVID outbreaks to staff, especially a small group of people who might connect outside the workplace. And I think the CDC guidance indicates that you ought to always share with anybody who has come into close contact the fact that there's been somebody positive. And, you know, the current close contact definition is 6 feet, mask or not, for 15 minutes total during a 24-hour period. If anybody knows how to measure that, I'll be interested in hearing that. It's an awfully difficult standard to meet. The question here on chat, if there's a 6 feet distance can be maintained between employees and there's no interaction with the public, is it reasonable to require the vaccine for those employees? Yes, it is in a vacuum, but I want to talk in just a second about, before we move on to our other topics, about what I see in talking to people and what I would recommend. A couple other questions first. So back to the reporting. If somebody in the workplace has been identified as positive, I go to them and say, we need to tell your fellow employees, do we have permission to identify you by name? If they say no, then you go to the employees who would fit that 6 foot definition and say, there's an employee in your group who's positive. Everybody will know it by that time because that employee's not at work. We need to send you to quarantine, or we need to do this or that. So it is important, I think, for all the CDC guidelines to inform everybody, here's what's happened. Here's what we're doing to address it. We're quarantining, we're cleaning. Walmart has been closing stores to completely disinfect them when they have an outbreak. And that seems a rather extreme thing, but if Walmart's doing that, I would suspect that's probably a good practice. Leave of absences while on COVID quarantine. I think everybody's up to speed now that the Family First Act, or what I called FFICRA, expired at the end of last year. The new act that we'll discuss a little bit more in a minute allows an employer to grant that leave, but does not require it. And if you decide to grant that 2 weeks of leave, you can take the same automatic tax credit as you were allowed to under Family First.
Mike, there are a couple more questions too, if you'd like to touch on those.
Sure. So additional vacation days and incentive to take the vaccine. I think that's fine. If you can organize the workplace to be able to do that, that's great, because anything you can do to incentivize people to get the vaccine, I think is important to do. Let me just say for a few minutes some practical things about requiring the vaccine. I think it's premature to have a policy saying we're going to require everybody to be vaccinated. And here's why. There's no way any of us are going to be able to get universal vaccination of employees for 60, 90, maybe even 180 days, depending on how things go, just because they're not available. And we know, I think, based upon what's been going on, that we're not, the state's not ready to move down to 1B and 1C because they hadn't gotten all the over 70s and all that vaccinated yet. So you're not going to be able to enforce it for a while anyway. And I think the time is better served at this point in promoting and educating employees and starting to number one, publicize your incentives that you're going to offer. And number two, have those who have been vaccinated be out front about it and let employees know that's what we want and we're happy we went and got vaccinated. I'll tell anybody that wants to hear, as soon as they're ready to put that needle in me, I'm stepping up, and I'm not going to be shy about it. I will direct y'all to the state health information department, I believe is what it is. Dr. Joe Thompson gave a talk 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, on a Thursday webinar that they have, that he speaks at, and he talked at length about the safety of the vaccine and how very, very few adverse effects have been documented. And and if you can't find it, email me and I'll find it and send it to you. He made me a believer in not to be scared about it. So that there was the question that just came, where should the educational material come from that we can share with our team members? First, I would go to your pharmacy that you can partner with and have them share information. And then if you go to that state health information, health services department, I sure wish I'd have found it before we started, but go to that website and you can find that recording. And if you can't, again, email me and I'll find it and send it to you. So great, Wayne, thank you. He puts in chat for any monetary incentive or COVID vaccine bonus, you're going to have to recalculate that into the regular rate for any non-exempt employee when you're calculating their overtime. For those of you who have had experience with certain lawyers here in Little Rock suing them for wage hour violations, you know that the use of non-discretionary bonus money and overtime calculation is a cheaper thing to do on the front end than the back end.
Mike, I think I got a question directly to me. I don't know if that was purposefully, but it was, if everyone else is vaccinated, how would the unvaccinated person be a direct threat to them? Wouldn't they be protected by everyone else?
I think the idea is the other people are protected, but we want them not to get sick, and we want our customers not to get sick. All right, anybody got any more vaccine questions or issues? Another minute for typing, people who type as slowly as I do. So FYI, the state vaccination czar, I guess I'll call him, is Rob Ader, who is the husband of a partner of ours and a retired Air Force colonel. And if anybody, and was in charge of the operations at Little Rock Air Force Base for many years. And my guess is if anybody can make the rollout smooth and efficient, Rob can do it. So I think that we're going to see a substantial ramping up in the ability to get people vaccinated in the near future. So the question is, clarify the direct threat from an unvaccinated employee to others. And so the issue there is that if I'm unvaccinated, then I'm going to be more likely to be spreading it to other people who are unvaccinated, and hopefully we're going to find out that the vaccines are effective enough that it's protected all the people who are vaccinated. I agree that under certain circumstances, when we have 98% of our employees vaccinated, the analysis for whether it causes a direct threat to others is probably not going to be an easy one for an employer to meet at that point. And so that's why I think I promote the idea of, let's do this voluntarily, educationally, incentivized to get the maximum vaccination we can before we try and force people to do it. And then we'll see. I think if I had 100 employees and 99 of them were vaccinated, and I had somebody who was clearly had a disability that would keep them from getting vaccinated, then I would probably say that's a risk that we're probably willing to take. But I'd have to think about that in light of the circumstances and whether we had open to the public and all that. So the legal requirement of the business to ensure that the vaccine is safe for the employee, the FDA has done all that we need in order to protect employers who encourage their employees to get the vaccination. I'll go back. It's my belief that by the time the vaccination is available universally, that the fear about it, what I would call the unquantified fear about it, will be lessened substantially. We won't have to worry about that. Here's an interesting question. If a fully vaccinated employee comes into direct contact with someone with COVID, should they still quarantine? And I don't believe the CDC has changed their guidance on that. I believe that they would still have to quarantine for now, because the CDC has also said, even if you're fully vaccinated, you should maintain social distancing and wear a mask. They have not changed any of that guidance so far. Great questions, though. Really, really great questions. And like I said at first, we're still all flying by the seat of our pants. It keeps changing, and I suspect it's going to keep changing for quite a while. All right, so let's move on a little bit from the vaccine and talk about some other topics, and I'll discuss these slides a little bit. Let Julio pop in. So, we all got really, really good news last month when the governor issued his executive order talking about unemployment contribution rates, and I've gotten way more involved in the minutia of unemployment contributions and benefits than I would have ever wanted to. So I'll try not to get in the weeds too much. So y'all understand that you pay each year an unemployment contribution rate based upon your experience rating during a benefit year, which is a 7/1 through 6/30 year. And so your contributions for this year are based upon 7/1/19 through 6/30/20. And so what the governor did for everybody in his executive order 20-54 is he said that all of the benefits paid through the unemployment trust fund for the second quarter of 2020 are not counted towards your contribution rate for 2021. It is everybody gets a pass for the first quarter of COVID, and so you should be getting, if you have not gotten already, your annual statement, which will tell you what your benefit rates are, and it will not include, I hadn't actually seen one yet, but it should not include any of the benefits that were paid during that second quarter. Obviously, now there's going to be time for the governor and the legislature to decide how to deal with that issue for 2022 for unemployment contributions that were made during since the second quarter of 20. Another good thing for a lot of y'all is that a lot of the unemployment benefits that were paid out from March of 20 forward were directly reimbursed by the feds. For any of y'all who had got the opportunity to develop a shared work program, all of those benefits were federally funded, and so they don't come out of the unemployment trust fund, and they don't adversely affect your rates. So the new stimulus bill provides $900 billion of money and relief to businesses. Paid leave was not extended, as I said a little bit ago, but the tax credits for FICRA leave are still out there if you decide to grant that. There's additional PPP loans, and we decided not to really discuss that today because we've already had partners who have done hour-long webinars. And if you want to get some more information on that PPP loan, you can go to the link that Tabitha just put up that goes to that webinar, which gives you all the information that you need on potential PPP loans going forward. So minimum wage, as y'all know, we sent out news alerts, is up to $11 an hour in Arkansas. And I got to tell you, I looked at a map of the United States, and we're something like 8th in the country in the highest state minimum wage, which in the big macroeconomic scheme of things makes so little sense. But that's where we are, and there's not really much we can do about that. I want to make sure that everybody is aware of the pendency currently of the Raise the Wage Act federally, which is maybe or may not be tied to the new round of stimulus. And I'm not going to be an alarmist, but I want everybody to be aware. Wayne and I were actually talking about it yesterday. It is a graduated increase to $15 an hour for a national minimum wage. And I think that's about a 4 to 5 year period of time to get it up to $15 an hour. But for anybody in a tipped employee circumstance, restaurants especially, it in a graduated fashion does away with the tip credit, which is going to end up making waiting tables a much more lucrative occupation if that passes. So lots of potential issues with the minimum wage. You got to make sure that you're hitting right overtime rates. And for those of you who have exempt employees at the bottom of the salary requirement schedule, you need to consider whether that's going to be a sufficient separation from your minimum wage employees or all of your other non-exempt employees to justify those people being treated as exempt. So also the CDC guidelines on travel and quarantine, which I was really happy that they didn't come out 2 days earlier, because I was on an airplane 2 days earlier. So 7 days, negative test, no symptoms, 10 days quarantine, no test, no symptoms. Positive test must be symptom free for 24 hours.
And Mike, they also gave some guidance on what you should and shouldn't do before you travel. So you want to avoid, crowded outdoor places. If you can't socially distance or wear masks, indoor settings, obviously, if you can't socially distance, wear masks. Very important to avoid that, just because they want to avoid all of these situations where people travel and then you can't go back and contact trace because there's no way to identify where they got these cases. So just little comment.
Right. And more businesses are requiring people coming on premises to fill out contact tracing information, so that they can properly do that. The difficult thing is that the CDC guidance constantly changes, and it's hard for compliance purposes. It's also hard to convey to people the importance of wearing a mask when the CDC guidelines define close contact as mask or no mask. And I get the question, well, then why do I need to wear a mask? And that, I know that causes difficulty for everybody. And so my response to that is, please be considerate and just wear the mask. So we've got some time left. What documentation is required to fly is a question. I believe most airlines are currently, or some airlines are currently asking for negative tests. I know that certain location, I think Dan actually flew to a location that that required a negative test to be able to land at that airport. And I think that more and more places are going to require that. And so that's that is something that you need to check before you decide to go anywhere. Is do I need a test before I go? And I promise you that 180 days from now it's going to be, do I need a vaccination record to get on an airplane? But because I'm going to be a big believer in requiring that before people get on my airplane if I had one. So Tim Orlano put on here that the RSHRM State Council is trying to put together a panel discussion. So any of y'all who want to get involved in that, contact Tim. SHRM is a great place for information. I know that there's some, Wayne has actually used some forms on there for vaccination policies and questionnaires for people who don't want to get vaccinated to use, to be able to walk through that process of getting as many people vaccinated as we can, and ensuring that the people who have legitimate objections to it, we accommodate or at least try to do so. So the 7-day, 10-day guidelines for exposed but have no symptoms only applies if the person does not live in the same household as the positive person. Yeah, if we're living in the same household, unless we're figuring out a way to, yes, Tim, it's not a COVID cough. It's I hadn't had anything to drink for an hour cough. Thank you for that. I can live in the same household as somebody, but not be in contact with them. And that might get me around the 7-day, 10-day guideline. Terry, if that answers your question. So Wayne put on here, if the SHRM website has great forms and articles. So a question about wanting to do vaccinations at the manufacturing plant. Are there any precautions around privacy that need to be taken? I'm a big believer in telling the pharmacy, this is your deal. we're not going to be involved in any of the questionnaires that you give employees. We're going to put you in a room where people can go in and get their vaccination. We don't see anything. We don't hear anything. For those of y'all who are old enough, we're Sergeant Schultz. I know nothing. So because really and truly, we want to build that wall because we don't want to know any more about somebody's potential disability than we absolutely need to know. Hope that makes sense.
That's where that question about the proof of vaccination is very important. You just want to keep it nice and sweet and short. And ask for proof, no more.
So I'm going to read this and not identify who wrote it, because some of us are sensitive to this. I'm not because of our workplace, but somebody close to me has a workplace similar. Upper management will not require masks in the office, even in common areas. Hadn't required employees to report if they tested positive, and is not supportive of developing a policy. From a legal standpoint, any hard and fast regs, laws I can use to back up my argument we should be doing these things. I will say that when we've had a positive case, we've closed and had the space disinfected. What I would say is the governor's executive order says that you are immune from suit if you follow CDC guidelines in the workplace. And what I will also say is an employer who doesn't require masks, doesn't require employees to report they test positive, and is not supportive of development of policy is not following CDC guidelines. And therefore, there is at least an argument that they have lost the protection, the immunity provided in the governor's executive order. I just want to beat into submission anybody who says I'm not gonna require my people to wear masks. So Wayne says consider a discrete location for vaccination screening, if not the vaccination themselves. If you can do it off-site, do it off-site. If there is an outbuilding at your manufacturing plant or a vacant building close to you, then that would be a great place to do it. You're not going to disrupt production appreciably more by doing it that way. I hope that helped the uncomfortable HR professional with their argument to their boss to do something different. So here's the question: How about handling the gossip mill of who isn't or didn't get a vaccine? I don't want to handle that. I want to encourage it because it's the peer pressure from the people who have gotten vaccinated that's going to get other people to do so. Should retail employers in Arkansas require customers to wear masks? Yes. When I go into a restaurant, I got to wear a mask. When I go to the bank, I have to wear a mask. When I go to the grocery store, I wear a mask. And I'll tell you my experience, and I go to the grocery store probably more than anybody here. I go to the Kroger in the Heights, and I can't tell you how long it's been since I've seen somebody not wearing a mask. It seems to be working, y'all. I don't know. Great comment here. Not adhering to the CDC guidelines will also likely not meet the OSHA mandates. That's going to be something we'll be getting some information out next week on some of the new guidance from OSHA. So if you're not hitting CDC guidelines, you're at risk of getting in trouble with OSHA, and none of us want that. Question of idea of testimonials from vaccinated employees. Any concern about HIPAA? I'm not a provider, so there's not a HIPAA concern if I'm just an employer, and I'm not going to make anybody do that anyway. That's a voluntary. If they want to talk about their experience, then they need to do so. It's that I think it's a great peer pressure opportunity that will ultimately get more people vaccinated. I think most of us respond better when our peers tell us do the right thing than when our boss tells us that we got to do something. I'm a little resistant to authority myself. I think we've hit all the questions. Any more? I think that's all the questions. Hey, look, you guys know how to get a hold of us. And so if you got questions after this, if 30 minutes from now, something strikes you, shoot us an email. We'll do our best to respond. And if you're not on our news alert list, get on there. We're really enjoying doing this, putting out information to help, and hopefully that's helping y'all. Check out Wayne's comment here, and a great comment. An employee who has a disability or a religious issue claiming they've been harassed if they decline the vaccine. So, if you get that issue where you see that happening or an employee complains, then that's the opportunity to quickly step in to fix that, to make sure that does not happen. We need people saying, I got vaccinated and I'm real happy. That peer pressure, not the wagging my finger quite thing. And I think Wayne's comment is really, really wonderful. So, all right, Tabitha, you want to close us out?
Yes, just a reminder, we're going to send everybody the presentation, the video today, plus the PDF of the actual presentation, the slides. So we'll send that out this afternoon. And just a reminder, you get more information on our attorneys, not just the labor employment, but our entire attorneys who are producing information about the coronavirus and any new laws that come up at fridayfirm.com/coronavirus. So thank you for joining us.
All right. Thank you, guys. Sure enjoyed it.
Everyone.